There are 5 oils that people claim can help your heart, but only one of them has the kind of scientific evidence that actually holds up under scrutiny. And here is something you need to understand from the start. No oil literally cleans your arteries the way a drain cleaner clears a pipe. That's marketing language, not science. What the right oils can do is slow down damage, improve your cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and potentially stabilize plaque that's already formed in your blood vessels. Today, we're going to examine extra virgin olive oil, fish oil, flaxseed oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil. We'll look at what the research actually demonstrates, what the major health organizations recommend, and what this means for you if you're over 60 and want to protect your heart. Cardiovascular disease kills 919,032 Americans every year, which works out to 1 person every 34 seconds, and it remains the leading cause of death across gender and most ethnic groups. Getting this right matters. Let's start with what's actually happening inside your arteries. Section 1. What cleaning arteries really means before we talk about oils. You need to understand what we're dealing with. Atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaque in your arteries, doesn't work like gunk building up in a pipe. What's actually happening is a complex biological process that unfolds over decades. Cells lining your artery walls get damaged first, and then LDL cholesterol particles sneak in and become oxidized. Immune cells arrive and transform into something called foam cells. Smooth muscle starts to grow, and eventually, fibrous caps and calcium deposits form. This entire process takes years, sometimes decades. Here's something that might surprise you. When doctors performed autopsies on young American soldiers during the Korean War, soldiers averaging just 22 years old, 77% of them already had visible atherosclerosis in their coronary arteries. This process starts earlier than most people realize. When we talk about oils helping your arteries, we need to be clear about what's actually achievable. Prevention, meaning stopping new plaque from forming, has strong evidence behind it. Stabilization, meaning preventing existing plaque from rupturing, has good evidence as well. Regression, meaning actually shrinking existing plaque, requires intensive sustained intervention, and even then the plaque probably never disappears entirely according to Harvard Health. Dr. Dean Ornish published research in The Lancet in 1990 and JAMA in 1998, showing that extremely intensive lifestyle changes could produce modest plaque regression. But we're talking about an extremely low-fat vegetarian diet with less than 10% of calories from fat, combined with exercise, stress management, and group support over years. Stenosis decreased from 40% to 37.8% in his experimental group. That's meaningful, but it required years of comprehensive change, not just switching your cooking oil. Let's be realistic about what we can achieve and start with the oil that has the strongest evidence. Section 2. Extra virgin olive oil, the gold standard. If one oil deserves the spotlight for heart health, extra virgin olive oil earns that position. This isn't opinion. This is what the major clinical trials demonstrate. The most important study goes by the name PREDIMED, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2013 and republished in 2018. Researchers followed 7,447 high-risk Spanish adults for a median of 4.8 years, and these weren't healthy young people. These were older adults at high risk for heart disease, divided into groups, with one group following a Mediterranean diet supplemented with about 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily, while a control group followed a low-fat diet instead. The results showed the olive oil group experienced approximately a 30% reduction in major cardiovascular events compared to the low-fat diet group. That's a substantial difference. A separate 28-year follow-up study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology in 2022 tracked 92,978 U.S. healthcare professionals and found that those consuming more than half a tablespoon of olive oil daily had 19% lower cardiovascular mortality, 17% lower cancer mortality, and 29% lower neurodegenerative mortality. Even more striking, each additional 10 grams of olive oil consumed daily reduced cardiovascular death risk by 7 to 16%. Why does olive oil work so well? Extra virgin olive oil contains more than 30 phenolic compounds, with the key ones called hydroxytyrosol and oleocanthal. These compounds protect LDL cholesterol from becoming oxidized, and oxidation represents one of the critical early steps in atherosclerosis. These polyphenols also stimulate nitric oxide production in your blood vessels, and nitric oxide helps your vessels dilate, which improves blood flow and reduces blood pressure. About 70% of extra virgin olive oil consists of oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that reduces inflammatory markers and adhesion molecules, the things that allow plaque to start forming in the first place. The European Food Safety Authority confirmed in 2025 that phenolic compounds in olive oil lower LDL cholesterol and systolic blood pressure. How much should you actually consume? Evidence supports consuming about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons daily, roughly 20 to 25 grams, with the FDA's qualified health claim recommending 2 tablespoons daily used in place of saturated fats. That last part matters because you're not just adding olive oil. You're replacing butter, margarine, and other saturated fats with olive oil. Improvements in your cholesterol markers can appear within just 3 to 6 weeks, but actual reduction in cardiovascular events requires maintaining this habit over years. Section 3. The complicated story of fish oil. Fish oil and omega-3 fatty acids present a complicated picture because the evidence is genuinely mixed. The American Heart Association recommends eating 2 servings of fatty fish every week, and that recommendation has solid support. We're talking about salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring. Fish oil supplements tell a different story. Several major trials produced very different results. The REDUCE-IT trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2019, tested 4 grams daily of pure EPA, one specific type of omega-3 fatty acid sold as icosapent ethyl or Vasipa. Participants had elevated triglycerides and were already taking statins. The results proved impressive, a 25% reduction in major cardiovascular events, including 20% lower cardiovascular death and 31% fewer heart attacks. Dr. Deepak Bhatt of Harvard, who led the study, called it the biggest development in cardiovascular prevention since statins. And that's when things get interesting. The STRENGTH trial, published in JAMA in 2020, tested 4 grams of combined EPA plus DHA, the 2 main omega-3 salts found in most supplements, and the results showed no cardiovascular benefit whatsoever. Researchers actually stopped the trial early because the supplement clearly wasn't helping. The VITAL study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2019, followed 25,871 adults taking just 1 gram of omega-3 salt daily, and again showed no significant benefit for primary prevention. Though people who ate very little fish to begin with saw a 28% reduction in heart attacks. The conflicting results seem to come down to formulation. EPA-only supplements at high doses may work, while mixed EPA and DHA supplements may not, and dosage matters as well. Regular over-the-counter fish oil supplements typically contain much lower amounts than what proved effective in the successful trials. Here's something critical for anyone over 60. High-dose omega-3 supplements increase your risk of atrial fibrillation. A 2021 meta-analysis found that doses of 2 to 4 grams daily increased the FIB risk by approximately 50%. Given that older adults already face elevated FIB risk, this concern is serious. Harvard Health published an article titled "The False Promise of Fish Oil Supplements" that addresses this directly. The bottom line on fish oil: fatty fish twice a week has consistent support from the evidence. Prescription high-dose EPA might benefit those with elevated triglycerides who are already on a statin, but that's a conversation for your doctor. Over-the-counter fish oil supplements show mixed results, and the AFib risk deserves attention. Section 4. Flaxseed oil, the plant-based option. For those who don't eat fish, flaxseed oil often comes up as an alternative. So let's look at what the science actually demonstrates. Flaxseed oil contains something called alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA. 1 tablespoon provides about 7.3 grams of ALA, making it the richest plant source of this omega-3 fatty acid. Here's the catch though. Your body has to convert ALA into EPA and DHA to get the cardiovascular benefits, and the human body doesn't perform this conversion very well. Only about 1 to 10% of ALA converts to EPA, and just 0.5 to 5% becomes DHA. Harvard Health estimates that 1 tablespoon of flaxseed oil provides roughly 700 milligrams of EPA and DHA equivalent after accounting for this poor conversion. That's actually comparable to some fish oil capsules, but it's less than advertised. What can flaxseed oil actually accomplish? Meta-analyses show it can reduce systolic blood pressure by 4 to 5 millimeters of mercury and diastolic pressure by 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury in people with hypertension, according to clinical nutrition research published in 2024. A 2022 meta-analysis in the Journal of Thoracic Disease found flaxseed oil performed better than fish oil at reducing an inflammatory marker called hsCRP and serum insulin in diabetic patients with coronary disease. Here's something worth knowing though. Flaxseed oil does not reduce cholesterol. A meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2009 found no significant effect on LDL from flaxseed oil specifically. Cholesterol benefits you might have heard about come from lignans and fiber in whole or ground flaxseed. And when you extract just the oil, you remove those components. If you're going to use flaxseed oil, the recommended amount runs 1 to 2 tablespoons daily. The benefits take time to appear, typically 10 to 20 weeks. Section 5. Avocado oil promising but unproven. Avocados have become extremely popular, and avocado oil has turned into a trendy cooking option. But here's something that might surprise you. No randomized controlled trials have specifically tested avocado oil for cardiovascular outcomes. Most research examined whole avocados, not the extracted oil. What we do know looks encouraging. A 2022 study in the Journal of the American Heart Association followed 110,000 participants over 30 years and found that eating 2 or more servings of avocado weekly reduced cardiovascular disease risk by 16% and coronary heart disease by 21%. The composition of avocado oil closely resembles olive oil, running approximately 71% monounsaturated fatty acids, primarily oleic acid. A 2014 rat study published in Disease Markers found avocado oil produced cardiovascular effects similar to olive oil. And the 2022 Journal of the American Heart Association study noted that when researchers looked at replacing avocado with olive oil, the results were non-significant, suggesting both can be considered healthy sources of fat for cardiovascular disease prevention. Avocado oil probably works as a reasonable alternative, especially for high-heat cooking, where olive oil's beneficial phenolic compounds can degrade. Direct cardiovascular benefits of avocado oil specifically remain unverified in human trials, though. The evidence looks plausible based on its similar composition to olive oil, but it's not proven. Section 6. Coconut oil. The controversial choice coconut oil requires some direct talk. Despite what you may have heard, no major health organization recommends coconut oil for heart health. The American Heart Association explicitly advises against coconut oil for cardiovascular health. Their 2017 presidential advisory, authored by Dr. Frank Sachs of Harvard, reviewed 7 controlled trials, and all 7 showed that coconut oil raised LDL cholesterol. The official American Heart Association position states, because coconut oil increases LDL cholesterol, a cause of cardiovascular disease, and has no known offsetting favorable effects, we advise against the use of coconut oil. A comprehensive 2020 meta-analysis published in Circulation reviewed 16 trials with 730 participants and found coconut oil increased LDL cholesterol by 10.47 milligrams per deciliter compared to non-tropical vegetable oils. Total cholesterol increased by 14.69 milligrams per deciliter. Researchers estimated this could translate to approximately 6% higher risk of major vascular events. You might have heard that coconut oil raises HDL, the good cholesterol, and that's true. Here's what most people don't know though. Mendelian randomization studies have demonstrated that HDL is not actually causally protective against heart disease. Drugs that raise HDL have failed to reduce cardiovascular events, which means the HDL increase doesn't offset the LDL increase. What about those stories of traditional Pacific Island populations eating coconut and having low heart disease? Several problems exist with this argument. Traditional populations ate whole coconut with fiber, not extracted oil, and they followed indigenous diets rich in fish and vegetables with vastly different lifestyle factors. Harvard notes that these findings cannot be applied to a typical Western diet. What about MCTs, the medium-chain triglycerides that some people claim make coconut oil special? Regular coconut oil contains only 13 to 15% true MCTs, while the majority at 50 to 60% consists of lauric acid, which metabolizes more like a long-chain saturated fat. Here's a concrete number to remember. 1 tablespoon of coconut oil contains 12 grams of saturated fat. The American Heart Association's entire daily limit for people who need to lower their cholesterol sits at 13 grams. 1 tablespoon nearly reaches that limit. If you enjoy coconut oil for the taste, use it occasionally in small amounts, but don't use it because you think it's good for your heart. The evidence points elsewhere. Section 7. What the health organizations say. Let me summarize what the major health organizations actually recommend, because remarkable consistency exists here. The American Heart Association recommends limiting saturated fat to less than 6% of calories for those who need to lower cholesterol, about 13 grams daily. They specifically recommend using liquid non-tropical vegetable oils such as canola, corn, olive, soybean, and sunflower oils. And they recommend eating 2 servings of fatty fish weekly. Their 2017 advisory found that replacing saturated fat with polyunsaturated vegetable oil reduces cardiovascular disease by approximately 30%, comparable to what you get from statin therapy. The World Health Organization updated their guidelines in July 2023 and recommends limiting total fat to 30% of calories, saturated fat to under 10%, and trans fat to under 1%. They emphasize that fat consumed should consist primarily of unsaturated fatty acids. The Dietary Guidelines for Americans, 2020 to 2025, recommend less than 10% of calories from saturated fat and shifting oil intake to vegetable oil in place of fats high in saturated fat, including butter, shortening, lard, or coconut oil. The 2025 Advisory Committee specifically recommended replacing saturated fat-containing foods with plant-based food sources, including oils rich in monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids. Section 8. The history that started it all. Before we wrap up, I want to share how we even learned that olive oil benefits your heart, because this story goes back more than 70 years. In 1951, a scientist named Ansel Keys made an observation. Italians eating olive oil-rich diets had dramatically lower rates of heart disease than Americans, despite eating similar or even higher amounts of total fat. Keys launched what became known as the 7-country study, which ran from 1958 to 1980 and followed 12,763 men across 7 nations. What he found changed our understanding of heart disease. Men in Crete consumed more total fat than Americans, yet their heart disease rates measured more than 80% lower. The critical difference wasn't how much fat they ate, but what kind of fat they ate. Olive oil instead of animal fats. Since then, the evidence has grown stronger. The Lion Diet Heart Study, published in 1994 and 1999, showed that Mediterranean-style eating reduced cardiac events by 72% in heart attack survivors, and then PREDIMED in 2013 and 2018 confirmed the benefits for primary prevention. The field continues to evolve, with meta-analyses from 2024 confirming olive oil's benefits and ongoing research helping us understand why EPA-only omega-3 formulations seem to work better than combinations. Section 9. Practical recommendations. What should you actually do with all this information? For extra virgin olive oil, aim for 1.5 to 2 tablespoons daily and use it to replace butter and margarine, not in addition to them. Look for bottles that say extra virgin, as that's where the phenolic compounds are found. For fatty fish, eat 2 servings weekly, with each serving about 3 to 4 ounces. Good choices include salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring. For flaxseed, if you want cholesterol benefits, use whole or ground flaxseed rather than just the oil. The oil can help with inflammation, but it won't lower your LDL. For avocado oil, consider it a reasonable alternative to olive oil, especially when you're cooking at high temperatures. For coconut oil, limit it to occasional use and don't use it as your primary cooking fat if you're concerned about heart health. For fish oil supplements, talk to your physician before starting them. They're not recommended for general prevention, and the high doses that might help can increase your risk of atrial fibrillation. How quickly will you see results? Improvements in cholesterol markers and blood pressure can appear within about 3 to 8 weeks of consistent dietary changes. But reducing your actual risk of cardiovascular events takes years of sustained practice. Let's bring this back to where we started. No oil can literally clean your arteries because the decades of plaque buildup that happens in atherosclerosis cannot be reversed like unclogging a drain. That's not how biology works. Here's what is possible though. The right dietary choices can slow progression, reduce inflammation, improve your cholesterol numbers, and potentially stabilize vulnerable plaque, which may actually matter more than trying to shrink it. The evidence hierarchy becomes clear when you look at the research. Extra virgin olive oil has the strongest clinical trial support for cardiovascular protection, with omega-3 south from fatty fish coming next rather than supplements. Flaxseed and avocado oil offer reasonable plant-based alternatives with more limited evidence. And coconut oil, despite its popularity, raises LDL cholesterol and should be avoided if heart health is your goal. The Mediterranean dietary pattern centered on extra virgin olive oil, fatty fish, vegetables, and whole grains remains the best supported approach for cardiovascular health. This isn't a quick fix, but a long-term lifestyle pattern. Cardiovascular disease kills 1 American every 34 seconds. But the research shows us that dietary changes can make a real difference, not through miracle cures, but through consistent evidence-based choices made day after day. Thank you for watching. If you found this information helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, talk to your doctor before making significant changes to your diet, especially if you're taking medications or managing existing health conditions. Take care of your heart because it's the only one you've got.